This is Ray Martinez. Thank you for joining me on the program today. This is Conversations with Ray Martinez, and we're going to get into the Bible, and I want to talk about what resilience is. What is resilience when you think about it? When I think of resilience, I think sometimes people who are very resilient when they're in trouble or they're in a big challenge, such as the sports, wrestling, for example. You know, as a wrestler, you wrestle as a team, but you're wrestling individually, and you're the one that has to be the strong person in that moment. And if you get taken down, you got to be able to come back up. And that's part of the resilience. How strong are you? What are your skill sets to become a resilient person? Your knowledge of what you are as a wrestler is important. Resilience is really the ability to adapt, recover, and grow stronger in the face of adversities, challenges, or setbacks, often involving mental, emotional, or spiritual toughness to bounce back from difficulties. In the Bible, resilience is closely tied to the themes of perseverance, endurance, and steadfast faith in God during trials. It portrays resilience not as mere human willpower, but as a divine gift that comes from trusting in God's strength, promises, and sovereignty, enabling believers to withstand suffering and emerge transformed. And that is really important. When we read that verse in Romans 12:1 and 2, be transformed. How? By the renewing of your mind. The biblical perspective emphasizes that hardships can produce character, hope, and spiritual maturity when approached with reliance on God rather than self-reliance. Here are some key biblical verses that I think are important that help illustrate resilience. If we look at James 1:12, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Two key points there: to persevere and know that this is a test. And knowing that it's a test, you can prove yourself to be stronger. Look at Romans 5, verse 3 through 4. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Isaiah 40, verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. I like this because it says, but those who hope in the Lord. If you didn't have any problems, why would you need hope? So we're going to have problems. We're going to have challenges. We're going to have struggles. So that's why it says, take all those struggles and challenges and put the hope in the Lord that He will deal with them. The prominent Bible study that really exemplifies resilience are those of Job, Joseph, Daniel, and Paul. Now, let's take the story of Job. It's found in the book of Job. It's a profound example of resilience through unimaginable loss and suffering. Job, a righteous man, suddenly loses his wealth, his children, and his health in a series of devastating events. Yet he refuses to curse God despite his anguish and the poor advice from his friends. He questions and wrestles with this pain, but ultimately declares, though he slay me, yet I will hope in him. Job 13, verse 15. In the end, God restores Job's fortunes twofold, highlighting how enduring faith amid trials leads to renewal and deeper wisdom. He became a much better man out of this whole ordeal, and his wealth and everything just flourished. Another example is the story of Joseph, Genesis chapters 37 through 50. It would do you good to read that, because Joseph and all the things that happened to him, you never heard him complain. There's nowhere in the writing that shows he complained about any of this. He's the one that demonstrates resilience in the face of betrayal and injustice. Sold into slavery by his jealous brothers, falsely accused and imprisoned in Egypt, Joseph maintains his integrity and trusts in God, interpreting dreams and rising to become second in command to Pharaoh. He saves Egypt and his family from famine, later telling his brothers, in Genesis 50, verse 20, one of my favorite verses, he says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Joseph's journey shows how resilience, fueled by forgiveness and divine purpose, can turn adversity into opportunity. The story of Daniel, found in Daniel chapter 6, showcases resilience in the face of religious persecution. As a high-ranking official in Babylon, Daniel refuses to stop praying to God despite a royal decree forbidding it, leading to him being thrown into the den of lions. And you know the rest of that story. Through unwavering faith, God protects him overnight, and he emerges unscathed the next morning, declaring to King Darius that his God had sent an angel to shut the lion's mouth. The king's reaction to this was absolutely amazing. You should read more of that because he ends up throwing all these people that set him up. He ends up throwing them into the lion's den, including their families. So this narrative really illustrates how resilience, rooted in obedience and trust in God, can defy life-threatening dangers and lead to vindication and greater influence. Another example is the story of the Apostle Paul, detailed across the books of Acts and his epistles, such as 2 Corinthians 11, 23 through 33, and Philippians 3, verses 7 through 14. Paul endures repeated imprisonments, beatings, shipwrecks, and betrayals while spreading the gospel. Yet he pressed on with joy and purpose. I like this. He's being beaten up and he's going through all this catastrophe, but at the same time, he's still spreading the gospel. He's not stopping. He's not slowing down. He writes from prison about considering his past achievements as loss for the sake of Christ and finding strength in God's grace, stating, "I can do all this through him who gives me strength." Philippians 4:13. Paul's life demonstrates resilience as a continual forward momentum, transforming personal hardships into opportunities for spiritual growth and ministry. Let's fast forward a few years. Let's take Edison, for example. He faced extraordinary setbacks throughout his career, including over 10,000 failed attempts to create a viable light bulb filament, famously remarking that he hadn't failed, but rather found 10,000 ways that didn't work. Early in his life, Thomas Edison's another one of these amazing people, but everyone thought he was a failure. In his early life, he was fired from jobs. His first major invention, an electric vote recorder, was rejected as impractical, and multiple laboratories and factories burned down, destroying years of work and prototypes. Despite financial ruin, criticism, and physical challenges, he was nearly deaf from childhood. Edison persisted with relentless experimentation and optimism. His resilience led to over 1,000 patented inventions that transformed modern life, founding companies like General Electric. Edison's story illustrates how viewing failures as learning opportunities can fuel the groundbreaking success, often summarized in his quote, "Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time." That's what we need to do. Let's just try this one more time. Let me just pray one more time. Let me learn to let go and let God handle this through prayer. You have a blessed day.